Send it right back out to you guys, but I got to sneak in a quick word from Buckeye State Credit Union. If you haven't heard of them, let me introduce you to your new favorite financial partner. Buckeye State Credit Union is a local institution offering everything from checking accounts to home equity lines of credit and auto loans with some of the lowest rates in Northeast Ohio. Their Cleveland branch is in Shaker Heights, which is one of 5 locations across the state, making it easy to find one near you. But even if you can't get to a branch, don't worry, they have digital banking throughout, making it simple from anywhere. What sets Buckeye State Credit Union apart? Well, they make banking personal and convenient. At Buckeye, their focus is you. The core values are connect, simplify, and adapt, guiding everything they do, bringing people together, cutting through the clutter, and they're innovative. To learn more, visit buckeyecu.org. Buckeye State Credit Union, your money simplified. Jay, when we look back at the Nick Chubb tenure, what was your favorite moment? What's your favorite memory of Nick Chubb's story tenure here with the Cleveland Browns?
God, there were so many. And I don't remember which play it was when Jim Donovan gave the Chubba Hubba. What do you guys remember what run that was?
Oh, gosh.
It was a long breakaway run.
Yeah. No, I don't, off the top of my head.
I think it's more memorable to me because of the way Jimmy called it. I think with him.
It was against the Ravens.
Okay, the Ravens. I think with him, Mike, and I thought about this when I saw this last night on the rundown, and instead of like really digging into the archives and looking at old game footage, I could have come up with one. But with him, it's Nick Chubb. I don't know. It's like he's an entity. He is class. He is professional. He is courteous. He is determined. He is hardworking. All of the adjectives that you would write down on a piece of paper for the man you would want your son to become or the man you would hope your daughter would marry. That's Nick Chubb. That's Nick. My daughter knows nothing about football, okay?
Zero?
Zilch. Zilch. If I gave her a quiz, she'd probably get an F.
That is crazy. She lives. Is that possible? She lives in her own world, then.
And yeah, I mean, she just had her own interests, and she'd walk in the room, and Corey and I would be screaming and veins popping out in our neck, and she would look at her mother and say, "These guys are crazy."
Nothing
Falcons, in life
not the Ravens,
moves me to that.
Falcons, not the Ravens.
Falcons, okay. And when she was producing Good Morning America, she called me one night and she said, "Dad, Nick Chubb's parents are going to be on the show tomorrow." And the only reason she knew Nick Chubb is because otherwise she wouldn't have known him. It's because that her father and her brother were diehard Browns fans. And she said, I'm throwing the packet together now for George or whoever was doing the interview. Maybe it was Michael Strahan. And she's like, I'm really excited to meet them because I've heard so much wonderful things about him. She got a chance to meet them in the green room before the actual interview on the show. And she called me after the show and she's like, "Dad, I'm not exaggerating. This is going to sound like an exaggeration. They are the 2 nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. They are." And I said, "Of course they are. I've never met them, but they reared Nick Chubb like that." I would have expected. First of all, Chubb grew up in Chubbtown.
Yeah.
He's royalty.
That's crazy.
And I mean, his grandfather or great-grandfather, whatever it was, he's a direct descendant of the person that founded the place. And I expected that they would comport themselves with the utmost integrity and kindness and everything that you would want them to be. And Kirsten couldn't stop raving about them. And this is a person, again, who knew nothing about football, just said, I can understand now why you guys like Nick Chubb so much, because his parents were absolutely incredible. To the point where they were apologizing for things that they should not have been apologizing for. Little things like, would you like a water? I can't remember the instance that she gave me, and they're like, "Yeah, we're kind of thirsty. We're sorry, but that," things like, you don't apologize. You're someone's guest. Yeah. You should be treated a certain way when you're someone's guest. And she just said that they were just so humble and so amazing. And that was Nick Chubb. So when I think of Nick Chubb, it isn't the one play that bounces out. It's the videos of him lifting weights. And he never told us how much he wanted to be great. He showed us how much he wanted to be great.
Man, I'm sorry. We don't even got interviews like that with him. I can't even.
I know.
I don't. It's messed up because I don't got no. Like you said, you have all these memories from high school and it's on VHS and I can't transfer them over. So now I'm in my head, I'm like, Why wouldn't we get in these Nick Chubb interviews? Why?
I think it's because Nick shies away from all of it.
He didn't like talking.
He is not a self-promoter. Now think about that. In today's, he's a superstar. I mean, he's not good. He didn't play at a superstar level last year, but in his career, Nick Chubb was considered a superstar. And Nick Chubb that's why it's so antithetical to what superstars are and what they do. Nick didn't want interviews.
No.
Nick didn't want the camera in front of him.
He's got to talk once a week. He talked once a week.
That's it.
And if you approached him,
and he was courteous.
Yeah, I know a reporter who tried to approach him, and I talk on Thursdays or whatever it is. Like the day I have to talk is when I talk.
Yeah.
And post game, and he wasn't a jerk about it. No. It wasn't his thing. He didn't enjoy doing it.
He was embarrassed by the spotlight. I really believe that. I just believe that he was so humble, and he played the game that way. And I think he got the respect of all of his opponents. He almost had. Remember how at the end of Walter Payton's career, and I'm not comparing the two, but they do have one thing that I think is very similar. At the end of his career, even the opponents were rooting for Walter Payton.
Yeah.
I remember the outrage when the Bears gave the ball to William the Refrigerator Perry.
The Super Bowl.
In a Super Bowl blowout.
Against the Patriots. Yep.
Against the Patriots, 55-0 or whatever it was. They were
Super Bowl 20, I think.
It was 1985 season, 1986 Super Bowl. It was, their only blemish that year was the Miami Dolphins. There are Bears fans to this day that tell me there were two things wrong with that season. Just two. They lost to the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, and Walter Payton wasn't given the luxury of scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Mike Ditka, with truth serum in him, would tell him that that's a huge regret.
Yeah.
And that he made a huge mistake. But the outrage from the other players on the other 30 teams, I'm sure the Patriots didn't express this, but there were guys coming out of the woodwork saying, wow, the Bears did Walter wrong. And I think Nick has a similar level of respect, maybe a tick below that, but everybody in the league, if you talk to them, they all tell you, yeah, I love that guy.
You know what?
We want him on our team.
JC, I think for me, man, I wouldn't even say the favorite memory. I just think it's sobering because this is a hard lesson to swallow in terms of windows. If you look back and you say, take a look what, Dorsey did, right? And it sucks even more because, the quarterback that they took, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, he's doing better in Tampa Bay. He's had 2 years back to back with 4,000 some yards. But if you take a look at what we had when we was tanking and losing them games and stripping it down to the studs and the bare minimum, and you get Denzel Ward, and you get Myles Garrett, and you get Nick Chubb, and then you have Baker Mayfield, and you have Jarvis Landry, then you make the trade for Odell Beckham, and
One playoff win.
And then you got Batonio, and your offensive line is universally known as a top 5 offensive line. You got a generational pass rusher. Nick Chubb is in his prime. You got receiver. You drafted David Njoku. It's like, man, we was right where we were supposed to be. Go back and look to the Hollywood Higgins. People talk about Hollywood Higgins at the end of the first half when Sorensen hits him in the helmet and he fumbles out of bounds.
Yeah.
People say your look is. I used to cry about the third. What was it, 4th and 14?
Yeah.
Where you let the backup. Mahomes is out of the game, and to me, you look.
That was a ball game too.
Ball game.
If we get them off the field there, the game's over.
You can't tell me
we're going
to
the AFC Championship game.
And you come to you fast forward all the way to the day, and now we had another reset.
Yep.
Windows are funny that way.
That windows is wild. Like we're talking about new running backs. Myles Garrett tried to get up out of here. It seemed like Jarvis and Odell played here thousands of years ago. Now we have no receivers. We got one receiver and a bunch of guys, and you're trying to find a quarterback. And it's like, to me, I always say these windows. People say we got a window. Windows are very fickle. Ask the Oklahoma City Thunder, the first Thunder team, with Harden, Durant, Westbrook, Ibaka, and everybody. But they didn't win no championship. So for me, it's just like, it's sad to see it almost, I feel like, and I didn't even talk about Kareem Hunt. At one point, you had 2 of the top 5 running backs
Yeah.
And I just feel like we just didn't get enough for it.
To make it worse, the one thing that always gets me like a little where I need Pepto-Bismol or I need to throw up is when I think about the fact that Joe Thomas, Myles Garrett, and Nick Chubb are on this team. Those guys are going to wear gold jackets. Does anybody disagree with any of that?
Chubb is. Chubb,
Joe Thomas has his.
I think Chubb has to do. Chubb got a little more work.
See,
yeah, I think Chubb's borderline.
I don't know because the 5.1, that is the number for running backs.
If they give him the Gale Sayers, this guy was dynamic.
What did Gale Sayers average per carry? I bet it wasn't 5.1. Oh, I think there's only 2 or 3 guys that have ever averaged over 5 yards a carry for a meaningful number of carries.
Terrell.
Now, Gale Sayers played 5 years.
Five on the dot.
Okay, and played 5 years. Nick Chubb I believe he played 5 years. You might want to double check that.
He had 5 seasons where he played more than 2 games, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they say his career was ended by injury, cut short.
Well, Nick, I think no one's going to argue that. When you juxtapose his career length and you show that hit that he took on his knee, like
to me,
Terrell Davis is in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Terrell Davis had a very short career.
Very.
And I believe he would have been right around and maybe even above 5 yards per carry. Terrell Davis was
4.6.
Okay.
He has
70.
about 1,000 yards
the
more
difference
than-
with Terrell Davis is he won Super Bowls.
Right.
And he had more yards.
How many Terrell Davis have?
He has
7,600.
7,600. Chubb has about 68.
68. So
he needs 800 yards to surpass Terrell Davis.
I think he need to put together about 2 years. If he put together 2 years.
Okay, so let's say this then. If we're not going to say, and I think it's fair to say he's not a slam dunk Hall of Famer.
No.
But I do think that in time, because of his, I talked about this, because of his personality, his character, which matters.
Because for the Hall of Fame, it does.
It matters.
They vote on that.
And it's a vote. And the guys that are going to do the voting have a lot of admiration for Nick Chubb. That's why I think he eventually gets in. But even if he doesn't, we've got one guy that's in. Myles Garrett is absolutely going in at some point. And I think Nick Chubb is, at best, for me, if you want to call him a borderliner, that's okay. But what team has 3 Hall of Famers in the same era?
If you want to talk borderline, put Petonio on
Put
that
Petonio
list.
in there too.
Yeah.
And you know what? If Denzel Ward does this much longer, Denzel Ward's in that conversation.
Yeah.
So, can you guys think of a team that, like, when you start thinking the Steelers from the 70s, they've got all those Hall of Famers. They didn't just make the playoffs. They won rings.
I don't know if it's entirely.
Cowboys.
I don't know if it's entirely fair because Joe's at the end. Joe doesn't. Really
I know it
count
was.
with
Joe
this.
didn't overlap, but there was a little bit of overlap. And I do get what you're saying, but like you're going to have guys that played on the same team and had one playoff win.
Yeah.
And that's such an indictment
Yeah.
when you look, and it's to your point of the window. I used to think that the window was really truly cyclical. That's the way Pete Rozelle, the former commissioner many years ago, kind of set the league up to where you were really good for a stretch, and then 7 years later, you were not so good, and then 7 years later, you were really good. So it looked like a wavelength. Well, we know that the Steelers define that. They're always here. The Browns define that. They're always down here. You would think that just we would run into it once by accident, and it hasn't. And that's why it's such an indictment of this organization and multiple ownership groups and multiple general managers and multiple head coaches.
Yeah.
That they had a good sizable number of really good players here, and they did nothing with it.
Windows open faster in the NFL and close faster in the NFL than any other sport. Who saw the Commanders
Not nobody.
that fast?
Nobody.
You know what I mean? But yet at the same time, windows can close faster. In baseball and basketball, you kind of know when teams are getting toward the end. You kind of know. I mean, the Warriors sort of defied logic with one last gasp championship, but you knew Golden State was getting old.
You did.
You knew the Cavs' run was coming to a close, especially when LeBron left. You knew it was over. But in football, it's the most unpredictable of when they're going to open and when they're going to close.
We all would have sworn our lives away that last year the Browns were in the window still.
Yeah, we would have.
We all thought that they're none of us would have been stunned if they went 11-6.
Why?
And they went 3-14. So the window slammed shut on their fingers.
Can we revisit? I'm sitting there looking at all these players. All those players was Dorsey's players.
I mean, Chubb was, Baker was.
Joe Thomas was before.
Denzel was, Miles was before, Miles was Sashi.
Yeah. And Joe Thomas
was
obviously
well
was.
before.
Yeah.
They've not done a good job drafting, G. This current regime
No.
has not had a lead track record.
like
That's why I keep saying it, that this man has this year is a free pass year. How do you have a free pass year when you come in and your franchise was ranked? What were they ranked? We talked about this one day last week.
32nd.
No, they're 32nd now, but they were
11th when they started.
When he came in, he was dealing with a piece of clay that was considered to be the 11th best piece of clay in the league, and it's gone one direction consistently every year under his direction, down to the basement. And for anybody in this organization to say out loud that, oh yeah, he's safe this year, he's safe. I'm sorry.
And it started with his first draft pick. Joe Thomas retires, right?
Yeah.
You've had an anchor for
Yeah, you're
years.
right. It did. You're trying to replace him.
You try to replace him, and you took the worst possible candidate out of.
It's not wrong.
Out of all of the tackles that were in that class, and that sets you up for like, okay, well now we have Jed Wills, and you got nothing out of that. I can't. There's very few guys that have been impact players, and for me, that's why I was watching Jim Schwartz talk about it. Hey, look, Jim. He was saying something about Mason Graham and how he's used to blocking and trying to keep linebackers free in this little adjustment period. He gonna have to learn on the run. He better be starting. The Browns are great for this. They never truly always go youth. If you're gonna reset this and we sitting there going down memory lane, I want to see these young dudes. Give me somebody else so we can build and get back to next year where we got some guys where we could count on. Like, hey,
I know you call it the gentleman's punt. I'm calling it just an exploratory season. Like, what the hell do we have?
Oregon Trail.
What do we have? Lewis and Clark. What do we have?
Yeah,
The
like
Burke
that.
Park Trail.
I like that. We'll figure out.
That's good.
Looking
We'll
around.
get on that.